guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie, and today, instead of a wrap-up, I'm going to be doing my favorite reads from February. Now, I'm not doing a wrap-up solely because I read so many books in February. I think the total ended up being 25 or 26 books in total, and I don't want to make a 45 minute video reviewing every single one of them. So, since I've been reading just so much more, I figure the best way to go about the wrap-ups is to just talk about the books that just resonated so much with me and that I'm still thinking about, and then kind of leave the books that just were either fine, I DNF'd, I didn't like, leave those alone, maybe save those for a different video. Either way, I'm going to talk about the books that I really enjoyed. So, I have 7 books in total that I want to talk about. The first one being the obvious one. I did a whole video already talking about this, and that is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. I read this in a day and loved every second of it. My heart is broken. My mind is going a million miles an hour with theories. I have been bugging Sarah and Brittany to read all of the SJM world just so I can talk about this book. So, I already have my Descent into Madness video. If you want to just watch that train wreck of a thought process, I can link that down below in the description if you're interested. But I love this book. I need book 3 is where I'm at this point. Up next is kind of a 2-for-1, and I finished the Serpent and Dove trilogy by Shelby Mahurin. I really enjoyed finishing this series in February. I read Serpent and Dove right when it came out in 2019, fell in love with the story, fell in love with the characters, and then it was told to us that it was going to be a duology, so I was waiting for Blood and Honey to come out, and then once Blood and Honey dropped, it was also dropped that it was going to be a trilogy. So, me being the chaotic person I am, I bought Blood and Honey and then decided to push it off until Gods and Monsters came out. And I'm really glad that I did, because Blood and Honey was not my favorite in the trilogy. That's why I only have books 1 and 3 with me. Book 1, amazing. Great story, but enemies to lovers, fantastic. Essentially, we're following a witch and a witch hunter who, in circumstances, are forced to get married and try and deal with that. So Lou is our witch who is in hiding, not only from her new husband, but from her family, who's essentially trying to sacrifice her for the better good, or the good of all witches. And her husband is trying to find the witch in the city, which just so happens to be his wife. And our story kind of just flows from there, and it's fantastic. It's got great romance, it's got great magic, it's got a really cool magic system woven in. There's different types of covens. We have the blood witches, we have the kind of witch that Lou is, which I'm not even, nature witch, maybe? I think it's a nature witch. We have gods and all these other players within the story. So with Gods and Monsters, I love a good finale. If you've been on this channel long enough, you know finales are kind of my thing. I love them. It's why I read so many series, is because a finale, when done right, packs such a big punch and is usually one of my favorites in the entire series. See Kingdom of Ash, Deathly Hallows, those are some of my favorite books, and they're all finales. And this one did not disappoint. The amount of aggravation I was for most of this book because of the plot twists and everything, and not a bad aggravation. It was just aggravating because you love and fall for all these characters and you just want them to be happy, and the authors are evil and don't want their characters to be happy. So you're following them on this journey and you're just hoping and praying that they'll be okay. And I loved this. It was a fantastic finale to Lou and Reed's story. And this is definitely a series that I'm going to be getting on Audible to listen to, because this story is just so much fun and just fantastic. I really think that as a series, it's fantastic. A little disappointed with how Blood and Honey ended up going. It definitely had second book syndrome, but I promise you, if you got stuck on Blood and Honey, Gods and Monsters is so worth it. You'll be pissed off for a good chunk of the book, but I swear to God it pays off. Up next, I restarted getting into my Colleen Hoover books, and I ended up picking up Confess. And Colleen Hoover is a great author if you want something contemporary and emotional. It's the best way I can describe her writing. Confess is following this girl, Auburn, who is struggling through life, and she happens upon a job listing at an art house and helps out this guy, Owen, who seems to know her, and he's keeping a secret, obviously, but the way that his art studio works is he does paintings based off anonymous confessions. So though there were apps, I know when I was in college, like Yik Yak, and I think Postmates was one of them. Post Secret, I think is what it's called. It was essentially like that, where these people on slips of paper would write confessions, deep, dark confessions, and he would paint them. And what I loved about this book is we actually get the paintings. Colleen Hoover worked with an artist for this book, and the paintings come with their own confession, and they're gorgeous. I loved this. This book was so emotional and heart-wrenching, and I think I loved this book from start to finish. It was great. I loved Auburn as a female character. I loved Owen as our romantic interest. And I actually ended up finding out that this had a miniseries made in like 2017 with the girl who played Daphne in Switched at Birth, which is one of my favorite shows in college. And I binged this the entire miniseries after I finished the book, because that's who I am as a person, and I loved it. If you love this book, I highly recommend the miniseries, solely for the fact that most of the dialogue, word for word out of this, and it's everything I could have ever wanted out of a miniseries or movie, TV show, based off of a book. I really like this. I've been falling in love with all of Colleen Hoover's works, at least all the ones that I have read. I have not found a dud yet, so really happy that this one met my expectations as well. Up next, I have This Mortal Coil by Emily Suvada. This is a sci-fi, futuristic, dystopian type of series. And essentially what we're doing is we're following our main character, who is a hacker. And the thing about the hackers is she's not hacking necessarily websites or the government or anything like that. The way that the healthcare system works, have a panel on your arm, and you get apps to help with your healthcare, and you have to pay a fee depending for like your asthma app, and there are different things like that. And it was really interesting to see how it worked, but she is a hacker who is trying to help find cures, backdoors to get people apps downloaded when they can't afford to grab them. And I thought that was really cool, because while all this is happening, she's hacking and doing all this, the world is in a state of panic during a pandemic. And this pandemic is disturbing, to say the least. So most of the world has gone underground and is in hiding. But there are a few living on the surface trying to avoid the sick while also trying to survive. And our main character is one of those. And when a man shows up at her door saying that her father is dead and they need her help now because her father was this world-renowned geneticist, hacker, or coder. And one of his last words was that she can help finish finding the vaccine to this virus. They find her, and she's trying to get all these answers about her father, as well as answers about this man she's traveling with who was so close to her dad. And it's just such a fascinating world. I have a degree in biology, so I've taken a fair amount of genetics classes, and I loved this. I loved the warped nature of the science, because it didn't quite, it made sense, but not, it was missing something, but it was still, I was able to distend my beliefs enough to actually think that this was possible. And it was really cool to just live and be in that world where you can hack into your own genetic code, and seeing the different things that they're doing with that genetic code was so fascinating and just the most unique sci-fi I've ever read. And I loved it. I'm so excited to continue on with this series. Up next, I have Ties That Tether by Jane Igharo. And this one's a little weird because I found this book in a weird not back alley, but weird secondhand bookstore while I was wandering Seattle in the pouring rain. I love going to indie and used bookstores all the time, so whenever I travel, I try and visit as many as I can. And when I went to Seattle late last year, I found this weird little shop that was set up in a house, and literally just floor to ceiling books of this house and different rooms for different genres. It was so weird, but also really cool. And I found this book, and honestly, I don't know what drew me to it. It's Book of the Month book. That may have been the draw, but essentially this is a romance. We're following our main character, who is a Nigerian woman who has come to Canada. She came to Canada when she was like 12, but she came to Canada after her father died, and her father's dying wish was that she marry a Nigerian man so that she could keep her culture alive and her people alive through that. And then she falls in love with a Spanish guy, a white Spanish guy. And our story kind of goes on from there. This was so good. It talked about so many things. It talked about choice, talked about culture, ethnicity, race, all of the things. It talked about finding who you are as an individual while in a relationship, while also talking about the different aspects of being in a relationship and who you are as a couple opposed to who you are as an individual. And all of these things coalesced into this tiny romance, and it was fantastic. And I loved every second of this book. It was so heartfelt, so heartwarming, frustrating at times, because it was one of those things where the character was getting in their own way, but there were also other influences that made me just want to scream and shout at this book. But it was so good because I cared so much about our main character. Very, very similar to Serpent and Dove. I wanted to yell and scream at the characters because I was so passionate about their happiness, and I wanted them to have what they really wanted. And I think that's just a testament to fantastic writing, is you care so deeply for these characters. You get frustrated on their behalf because someone or something is standing in the way of their own happiness and they can't see it. And I love that within books, and this is a perfect example. This is one of the best romance books I've ever read. It had a lot of tropes, but they were twisted and turned on their head into such a unique fashion, and I love this book. It was so good. The last book that I have for my February top reads is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is the companion series, I think. I'm not sure if this is a duology or series to Stephanie Garber's Caraval trilogy, which was a Magical Carnival, Sisters, yada, yada, yada. In this, we're following Jax, who's a character you meet in the second book of the Caraval trilogy, and you're following his story after the events of Finale. So if you have any interest in reading Caraval and want to read this, please read Caraval first, then go into this. But this being Jax's story made it interesting because Jax was such a unique and interesting character. He wasn't a villain, but he was very morally gray, and he was very much out for himself, and you could tell that. And even he was like, no, I don't care about what's happening. I care about me. And he is very much that type of character, and I loved him for it. So in this, we're following Evangeline, who the boy that she's in love with is set to marry her sister. So she goes to pray to Jax, who is a god, in a sense, and begs him to stop it. And the way he does that is he turns the whole wedding to stone. But Evangeline kisses the stone dude, and then she turns to stone, freeing everybody else, and she turns to stone, hoping that because the way that the curse works, you have to kiss one of them or take yourself, and then it breaks. It's a whole weird thing. I'm explaining it very poorly, but from that, she becomes extremely famous and is set on a mission to become an ambassador to a new kingdom that is looking for a bride. And Jax kind of weaves his way into her life after the whole stone incident, and you are seeing all of these weird political ties. You're not sure what's real and what is under Jax's influence. There's so many different threads throughout this story. And I think what I really loved about it is it felt like reading a fairy tale. I love fairy tales and I read them a lot, but not all of them have that very storybook, like you're reading it from this giant picture book, you know, right before you go to bed. They don't invoke that feeling very often. It's a twist on a fairy tale, which I still love, but this just felt like that bedtime, slightly creepy fairy tale. Like the only thing I was missing was pictures. And it was fantastic. The story was great. Evangeline and Jax, their banter, their whole dynamic was so fascinating to watch and intriguing to the final page. And I'm so excited to continue on their journey because I have so many questions. I want more of Jax. I need more of Evangeline. And just with how everything ended, it was a perfect cliffhanger and a wild story. So those are my top books from last month. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite book that you read in February was, as I am, again, always adding to my TBR. But that's going to be it for today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, with the occasional Sunday, and I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!